Okay, so I'm just going to go over one of the standards for 8th grade. It's pretty long. So basically you have to explain how an author uses rhetorical devices in order to support or advance an appeal. The appeals being ethos. Oh, great. I'm really good at this. Pathos and logos. So what I want to focus on is this step 6 and kind of go over the different rhetorical devices that you're supposed to know in 8th grade. Not all of these are in the textbook and not all of these are in the pacing guide for 8th grade. So that's why I wanted to go over it. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is, I'll go with Christmas colors, is antithesis. So an antithesis is when you have a contrast of ideas, okay? And they're parallel in arrangement, so they're side by side. So one big example would be, that's one small step for man, but it's one giant leap for mankind. So small and giant are contrasting, okay? There's multiple examples of this. You can say it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And that one line or phrase, it has to show a contrast of ideas that are in parallel arrangement to each other, so side by side. Okay, so then we have irony. And you know, hopefully from class, that irony, there's 3 different types of irony. So we have verbal, we have situational, and we have verbal, situational, dramatic. So the one that we've gone over is dramatic, which is when we know something that the audience does not know. Check. We're going to think of Mulan. We're going to think of Toy Story. We have some information that the characters do not have. Situational would be something along the lines of a fire station burning down. So situationally, we wouldn't expect that a fire station would burn down since it is their whole profession to prevent fires. So that would be an example of situational irony, when the situation is in contrast to what you thought was going to happen. And then verbal irony, the most basic example would be sarcasm. So it's when you say something, but you don't really mean it. So if your mom walks into your messy bedroom and she says, "Wow, it's so nice and clean and organized in here. I love the look." And really what she means is, go pick this up right now. This is a mess and it's horrible. That would be verbal irony. So it's when you say the opposite of what you actually mean to say. Or if somebody gives the wrong answer and I say, "You're so smart," right? And I really mean, you did not get the answer right, you're not paying attention, then that would be verbal irony. So verbal irony is like sarcasm. Situational irony is when the situation is not what you were expecting, or the opposite of what you would expect to happen happens. And dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the characters do not know. And it creates suspense, it creates tension. So the next one would be a rhetorical question, which again, we've practiced this in class. So we're just gonna put, we've done antithesis, we've done irony, we've done rhetorical questions. So a rhetorical question is a question asked for effect, and there's usually no answer needed, or the answer is so obvious, right? And it's just meant to make the audience think. It's not meant to actually have the audience member raise their hand and give a legitimate answer to the question. Okay, zeugma is one that is not in the textbook. So a zeugma is when you are modifying the way that you use a word so that it applies in different ways. So I will give you some examples. Okay, so if you just went through a breakup and somebody's sharing the story and she says she broke his car and his heart, that would be an example of zeugma, because the word broke is being modified to mean two different things. So when you say she broke his car, we mean she literally swung a baseball bat and smashed his front windshield. Whereas when we say she broke his heart, we're meaning metaphorically. She didn't swing a baseball bat at his chest, right? So we're using the word broke in a way that is literal and also in a way that is figurative. So let's do another example. Okay, hurry up because everyone's coming back in. Okay, they covered themselves in dust and glory. So again, this would be an example of zeugma, because covering themselves literally with dust and figuratively with glory. So this would apply to something like maybe a story where the main character has gone to war and is a soldier, and there's glory in the fight, and they're covered in dust, they're in the trenches. And again, this is a rhetorical device where the same phrase or word is being modified to fit two different versions of it. So to fit multiple scenarios. So literally with the dust, metaphorically with the glory. So we're back, and it's 10:30 p.m. on Friday. We had a lot of stuff to do today, and we couldn't really find a chance to finish. So we're moving on to figurative language. So for figurative language, we have a huge list here. Some things that you guys are already familiar with from 6th and 7th grade, and some things that you might not be familiar with. So the first word here, meiosis, you might associate that with your biology or your science class. If you don't, then you will when you guys learn that. But in language arts, what it means is an understatement. So how could this be used as a rhetorical device? It's just whenever you understate the severity of something. So if there's some sort of like a character in a story has like completely torn off their leg, right? And then he's like, oh, it's okay, I'll just slap a Band-Aid on it. That would be an understatement. It can be used in arguments as well. So like anytime you try to minimize something, like maybe there's something going on in the government or in the political atmosphere of the world, and you understate the severity of what is happening because you want to gloss over it because it doesn't maybe side with your argument or your claim, that's a device, right? Or maybe when you're giving your counterclaim would be a good time to use this strategy, right? To kind of understate the counterclaim so it doesn't seem like it goes so much against you. The second one is metaphor. So for metaphor, we're just comparing two things without using the words like or as. So if we say she is a flower, it would be like you're saying she's as pretty as a flower, or she smells nice like a flower. But instead of giving all those comparisons, you just state she is a flower. One thing is the other, right? Whereas a simile uses like or as. So again, we're kind of thinking about this in terms of like an argument. So if you say the economy is like a wave because the economy goes up and it goes down, similar to a wave, then you'd be using a simile to make a comparison and to just break down a topic, make it easier and more understandable for your audience. For a metaphor, I mean, like if you describe a lawyer as being like a shark, right? You'd be like, oh, that lawyer's a shark. Are they literally a shark? No. Are they metaphorically a shark? Yes. As in they come on strong, they don't take no for an answer, they fight for their client. So it can be used in arguments. Alliteration. Alliteration would be more so if you were giving a speech, and in that speech, right, you want to sound eloquent and you want it to be memorable. So you use the alliteration. We already know this. So alliteration is when you have similar sounds at the beginning of words, like Sally sells seashells, right? And we saw alliteration in the Nobel Prize speech, and we're going to see it now in the articles that we're going to be reading soon. Idioms. Idioms are just, usually they're dependent on the culture. So idioms are just like sayings that if you take them literally, they won't make sense. So to give you some examples, if you tell somebody, oh, a penny for your thoughts, that is a way of asking what somebody is thinking. It's like you're offering them money for their opinion or for their thoughts on something. If you tell somebody that you need to bite the bullet, it could mean that you need to face a difficult situation with courage. You need to do the thing. You need to, when you bite the bullet, you need to do the ugly thing, the thing you don't want to do, because there's some sort of goal that you have to reach at the end of that. And there's like a lot of other ones that, you know, different cultures have different idioms, and using idioms as a rhetorical device or in your argument could just help to kind of maybe get more engagement from the audience and have them relate to you more. It's also pretty good for a speech if you're giving one. An allusion is basically just a reference. So we saw this in The Raven, where we had references to Greek mythology and to the Bible. We're going to see this, or we saw this in the Elie Wiesel speech, where he had references to other places in the world that were suffering from oppression, like in South Africa, apartheid, and there were references to Nelson Mandela and other activists who were imprisoned for speaking out against corrupt governments. So, and you can find references anywhere and allusions anywhere. An allusion is just a fancy way to say a reference, and you can find this especially if you listen to rap music. Rappers love to make references to celebrities, political figures, pop culture, events that have taken place, and they do it all the time. Sometimes they like actually name the people. Sometimes they make references to like even movies and books and just different things in their songs. And it's important to be able to spot them. So the next thing is hyperbole, which you guys should know from 6th and 7th grade. It's basically just an exaggeration of the truth. So if a class of yours is very long and boring, and you say, oh my God, this class has just gone on forever, it's been going on for eons. If you're so excited about something that you say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I could just die. If you're so hungry that you say, oh my God, I'm so hungry, I can eat a horse, that would be considered a hyperbole or an exaggeration. So personification is another element of figurative language that you guys should have learned in 6th and 7th grade. Basically just refers to personifying an inanimate object. Doesn't have to be like an object that's not alive. Like an animal is alive, but an animal doesn't speak. Only people speak. So if an animal in a story can speak and understand English, then that would be personification. Or Like, for example, like the tree in Pocahontas that can speak. A tree is alive, but it's an inanimate object. It doesn't, like, it's not a human being. So that would be a device that could be used if you wanted to really, like, demonstrate a point. Wow, I really talked about personification for a long time in the original recording. This is a voiceover because I lost the first voice memo. And I'm not sure exactly what I talked about with personification there. So we're going to move on to onomatopoeia. Okay, that's my cue. So for onomatopoeia, usually by 8th grade, you guys have stopped using this in your argumentative essays. And it's basically just a word that makes a sound like pop, bam. And a lot of students use this like as a hook or an opener. You could use it in a speech or an essay that's argumentative, but you won't really see it as much. You can do it, but you have to do it like in a very eloquent, like mature way. And it might even show up in our upcoming articles about a soda ban. So you can see where if you're writing an article, like argumentative, editorial about soda, you might be like wanting to include some fizz or pop. Like when you open up a can of soda or the fizzing sound of the carbonation, you might include that. So it's possible. So again, this whole video is just meant to be going over R3.4, where you have to explain how an author uses rhetorical devices to support or advance an appeal. And we were focusing on step 6, and the appeals are pathos, ethos, and logos. But this standard can also be used for writing your argumentative essay and understanding what devices you guys have in your toolbox to be used in order to persuade your audience.